What's up, everybody? Tommy and Nate here. So we got a request the other day to make a video about our thoughts on, making small compromises in regards to your sobriety. So an example of that would be, if someone stops drinking for a period of time and then they start drinking non-alcoholic beer. There's a whole bunch of new types of non-alcoholic beer that's been coming out recently. There's always been that one that everyone knows, but now all the different beer companies are making this non-alcoholic beer, smoking CBD, weed, things like that.
Yeah.
So,
yeah, we deal with a lot of people who, quit drinking or using drugs. And I remember, there's one young man I was working with one time, and he said, well, what do you guys think about smoking CBD blunts? I said, well, did you used to smoke blunts that had THC in them? And he was like, yeah, absolutely. And I said, well, I feel like that's kind of a compromise as far as like your sobriety. You're starting to do behaviors that, were something that you did when you were in active addiction, So, I think one of the things to look for a lot of people is when they start making small compromises, right? Towards a relapse, possibly. Like drinking non-alcoholic beer. And some people, I will say that some people are able to do these types of things and they're fine, but we see a ton of people who start going down that path of familiarity. I know for me, if I drank a non-alcoholic beer, it would remind me of beer immediately, and I would have. I'm 4 years sober, but I would start to think about all the times I drink beer, you know what I mean? And I would get probably some euphoric recall. Now, me being 4 years sober and working an active program, likely I could reel myself in. But why would I take that chance?
Why would you do that in the first place? For one, why would you want to drink non-alcoholic beer? Because in my opinion, beer tastes horrible, but I guess not everyone feels that way. But, what's the point of that?
I don't know, and people, I've seen them...
Drink some water.
Go as far as to, buy cigarillos, or blunt wraps and gut the cigarillo with an X-Acto knife, and they're breaking down their CBD flower. And they're smoking it just like they used to smoke their joints, This is the kind of thing that can push us towards making compromises to the point where we get to, where we're ready to smoke a joint full of THC, and we're not super anti-weed, weed's going to freaking ruin your life, but it has the potential to, just like any substance that's dangerous, right? But, it's making these small compromises, these things that are going to give you euphoric recall, especially if you're in early sobriety. I've seen people that have been sober for multiple years, and maybe they've done some of these things that we're saying to be careful of. And like I said, maybe they're absolutely fine. But I find that to be the exception, not the rule,
the drinking non-alcoholic beer and smoking CBD, I would compare that to me getting a spoon and putting some water in it and heating the water up and drawing it up into a syringe and shooting up warm water into my arm.
It could be, yeah.
It's not going to get me high, but
right.
You said it 5 times, the euphoric recall.
Yeah.
Like that. I know exactly what that would make me want to do.
Yeah, or,
it would be the same thing if I was smoking CBD weed or drinking non-alcoholic beer or, whatever. And just putting myself back in that mindset, it would not go well.
Yeah, it's really just, we're trying to caution people on that. I've seen people who have gone as far as to, buy caffeine pills and crush them and snort them, because they feel well, the caffeine hits me faster this way, which is, to people who aren't addicts and alcoholics, you would think, well, that's absolutely a silly thing to do. Why would you do that? You can just take it as a pill. So those are the kind of things people need to look out for when, they're making these small compromises, because along with these small compromises generally, right, comes people we're hanging out with that are typically not in our sober circle, right? Because typically people that are in my sober circle, if they saw me smoking, CBD flower, just like I used to smoke blunts full of THC and whatever else, God knows
what the hell are you doing?
They'd be like, why are you doing that, Or if they saw me drinking non-alcoholic beer, they'd probably be like, hey, man, I think that could be possibly, concerning for you. Again, they'd say, do what you feel like you want to do. But I think that they would at least care enough to caution me, And again, we're not here to shame anybody. We're simply telling people to be cautious, And like I said, typically what we see then is people are hanging around those people who are drinking alcohol. And it's okay to be around people that drink alcohol. But if you're somebody in early sobriety, and you're going to a party where people are just getting trashed, that's not a good idea. They always talk about, if you hang out in the barbershop long enough, you're going to get a haircut. You hang out in the bar long enough with your friends who are getting wasted, you're probably going to have a drink, right? Or if you're at the dope house, or even somebody's house that just smokes a bunch of weed or, maybe does other drugs, or they're constantly partying with a mix of alcohol and drugs, those are small compromises that we're making towards a relapse. And those are the things we really need to be watching out for. And that's why we surround ourselves with people in recovery. You know, a lot of times people that are not in recovery don't understand that it can be a slippery slope for us. And what we hate to see is when people have a good amount of sobriety, they're in recovery, right? They're starting to get some things back, like their family's talking to them again. You know, like their kids are back in their life. You know, maybe they have some financial stability. They're not fighting with their partner as much. It can put those things in jeopardy, you know, because I know for me, and again, we're just speaking from our own experience with ourselves and what we've seen, it can certainly cause the wheels to start turning in my head, you know, which is not good for me, you know. So we get very concerned when we see these things happening with individuals that we work with. And then, you know, we've had these things happen just on our own story, right? And I think sometimes too, it can actually make an easy transition for us to substances that we maybe feel are lesser than what we were doing before, right?
Like every time I went to detox and then came home and smoked weed, because I thought, I've been smoking weed since I was 12, 13 years old. It's not any different than smoking a cigarette. It's going to be legal soon.
Exactly.
You know, all the stupid excuses that I would tell myself. And again, not judging anybody else's recovery, but for me, it didn't ever work out, and it still wouldn't now. And it goes the opposite way also. Someone who is an alcoholic and they stop drinking and they smoke weed, or someone who's a heroin addict and they stop doing heroin, but they're just going to drink now.
Yeah.
In my opinion, in our opinion, it's all the same thing. It doesn't matter what the chemical is. If I'm using it, I'm going to abuse it. I'm going to do it addictively. I'm going to spend all of my money on it.
Yeah.
And again, if I start out drinking non-alcoholic beer, smoking CBD weed, it's going to put me right back in that mindset. It's going to flip that switch in my brain, and I'm going to want to get high.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean,
you know, a lot of it comes down to your behavior. And
right.
if I'm behaving in similar ways that I used to, chances are I'm going to start behaving like I used to.
And my thing was, I would always get caught in that trap. Like, you know, heroin was my drug, cocaine was my drug heavy, you know. So in my mind, I would start to think, well, alcohol's legal. There's no reason why I shouldn't be able to have a beer with my burger at dinner, right? And then I would go on, you know, down this path of, you know, well, I had a beer at dinner, now I can have a couple shots after dinner. And, you know, alcohol always led me back to my drugs of choice, which was heroin and cocaine. You know, like I used to say, I get a couple drinks in me, I go start to accessorize a little bit. You know, I go look for the next thing. And so we just want to caution people on that, you know. And again, we're not here to judge anybody. And if you have done those things, or you are doing those things, we're not saying necessarily that you're wrong. We're just saying that you could possibly put yourself in a compromising situation. So again, you know, watch the substitutes, like smoking, like CBD blunts, CBD flower, drinking non-alcoholic beer, taking medications in a way that could be dangerous, like snorting them. Be careful who you hang around, right? Like, so, you know, early in sobriety, if you're sober, likely you've probably cut a lot of those people off initially that are drinking heavy and partying. Don't make small compromises towards those people being back in your lives, you know. And again, I'm not saying you can't ever hang with those people again or have a relationship, but maybe not in a setting where they're getting completely trashed or wasted or high as shit, you know. So I honestly think that, you know, we just want to caution people on taking those small steps towards possible relapse. And that's all I got. You got anything else, Tommy?
Nope, I think that's about it.
All right, guys. Well, we appreciate it. You know, if you guys have any other questions, or you guys want to, you know, hear any other topics, always send them to us. We're happy to talk to you. Thanks. We'll see you guys later.
Yep. Thanks for watching.